Hello everybody and welcome to today's video, a character analysis of Paris in Romeo and Juliet. Download a free worksheet to accompany this video through following the links in the description. Paris, we read in the list of characters, is a young nobleman, kinsman to the prince. The audience first meets Paris in Act 1 Scene 2, where he's midway through conversation with Lord Capulet. Shakespeare here presents Paris as selfish and insensitive. Lord Capulet is telling him about the prince's decree, but Paris quickly tries to change the subject. Of honourable reckoning are you both, and pity 'tis you lived at odds so long. But now, my lord, what say you to my suit? The suit in question is Paris's offer to marry Juliet. Capulet's reply is telling, but saying over what I said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world, she hath not seen the change of 14 years, let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride. The phrase, by saying over what I said before, informs the audience that this is not the first time Paris has spoken to Capulet about marrying Juliet. He is persistent. Now, to a modern audience, it might seem strange that Paris is speaking to Capulet about the marriage and not to Juliet herself. However, some context on arranged marriage in Elizabethan England will help us to understand how an audience in Shakespeare's time would see nothing out of the ordinary here. In the 1500s, arranged marriages were normal for middle and upper class families. It was acceptable for your parents to choose who you married, and Juliet would have expected her parents to do so. Paris, although he is a tad insensitive, is simply following the normal social codes of the day by discussing his marriage proposal with Juliet's father. Capulet tells Paris that Juliet hath not seen the change of 14 years, and suggests waiting a couple more years to marry. Paris's reply is, younger than she our happy mother's maid. In other words, he's not going to be dissuaded from his plan. The next time we see Paris, in Act 3 Scene 4, he seems unable to read social cues. Capulet tells him 'tis very late, she'll not come down tonight. I promise you, but for your company I would have been abed an hour ago. This not-so-subtle comment is basically Capulet saying, you need to go home now, Paris, presenting Paris as insensitive and laughable. In Act 4 Scene 1, we see Paris and Juliet together for the first time. The scene takes place at Friar Lawrence's cell, where Paris is trying to organise his upcoming wedding to Juliet. 2 things to point out here. When Juliet arrives, Paris greets her by calling her my lady and my wife. This, of course, is not true. Juliet is not yet Paris's wife, and this presents Paris as presumptuous. Secondly, Paris tells Juliet, thy face is mine, and thou hast slandered it. Even before they are married, Paris talks to Juliet as if she is his possession. Again, contextually, an Elizabethan audience would understand Paris more than we do today. Once married, a wife became the legal property of her husband. Today, we see Paris's possessive attitude as simply detestable. There is certainly plenty of evidence for seeing Paris as the villain of the play. However, Shakespeare rarely makes things so clear-cut. What we also see are occasions when Paris is presented as strikingly similar to Romeo. At the end of Act 1 Scene 1, Benvolio tells Romeo to take his mind off Rosaline by looking at other beautiful women. In the very next scene, Capulet gives Paris similar advice. This night I hold an old accustomed feast. At my poor house look to behold this night earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light. Structurally, the 2 scenes are placed next to each other to make this parallel between Paris and Romeo all the more obvious. And this is not the only time Shakespeare draws a parallel between Paris and Romeo. Shakespeare employs the same metaphors for the 2 characters. Nurse calls Paris a man of wax in Act 1 Scene 3, whilst Friar Lawrence tells Romeo, thy noble shape is but a form of wax in Act 3 Scene 3. In Act 2 Scene 3, Romeo tells Friar Lawrence how he's fallen in love with Juliet. Friar Lawrence advises Romeo to slow down, telling him, wisely and slowly they stumble that run fast. In Act 3 Scene 6, Paris tells Friar Lawrence how the marriage with Juliet is to take place on Thursday, and the friar replies, on Thursday, sir, the time is very short. Friar Lawrence cautions both Romeo and Paris against their hasty pursuit of Juliet. In Act 2 Scene 6, Friar Lawrence waits in his cell with Romeo, and as Juliet approaches, Friar Lawrence says, here comes the lady. Similarly, in Act 4 Scene 1, Friar Lawrence waits in his cell with Paris, and when Juliet enters, Friar Lawrence says, here comes the lady. And in Act 5 Scene 3, the parallels between the 2 reach a crescendo as both decide to visit Juliet's tomb at the same time. Paris attends with his page, telling him, give me those flowers, whilst Romeo attends with his servant, telling him, give me that mattock and the wrenching iron. Why might Shakespeare want the audience to see Paris and Romeo as similar? On a simple level, we're reminded of the key theme of fate in the play. If it were not for the fact that Romeo was from the enemy Montague family, the audience realises that Romeo could and almost certainly would be the one seeking out Capulet's blessing for the marriage. He would be pursuing Juliet in the socially accepted mode of the day. Seeing Paris pursue Juliet in this way heightens the sense of tragedy that the star-crossed lovers cannot do the same. Up until Act 5, Shakespeare presents Paris in an overly negative manner. Interestingly, in Act 5, Paris suddenly comes to life as a character in his own right. For a start, we get the sense that Paris truly cares about Juliet as he goes to cover her tomb with flowers. Thinking Romeo has come to the tomb to do some villainous shame to the dead bodies, he ends up fighting with him, and Romeo kills Paris. As he dies, Paris asks Romeo to lay me with Juliet, to which Romeo agrees. Paris's actions here are not those of a villain or a bumbling idiot. They're heroic, and more in line with what we've come to know of Romeo. Even Romeo sees how similar he is to Paris, saying, "Oh, give me thy hand, one writ with me in sour misfortune's book." So why does Shakespeare present Paris so valiantly in this final act? Well, in Shakespearean tragedy and its double, Kent Cartwright states that Paris's very position as Romeo's antagonist makes him, of course, the reprise of Tybalt. An antagonist is a character, or sometimes a group of characters, who acts in opposition to the protagonist, the main character. The protagonist Romeo wants to be with Juliet, but the antagonist Paris gets in his way, resulting in a fight to the death. The clever thing here is that now the previous antagonist, Tybalt, is dead, Shakespeare needed someone else to take on this role to keep the dramatic tension high. For this reason, the previously one-dimensional, idiotic Paris now transforms into a brave and heroic character, willing to fight to the death to defend the honour of Juliet. Thank you to Kent Cartwright, who gave me permission to use this quotation in the video and the revision guide. And so, whilst at first glance Paris seems like little more than a one-dimensional villain, Shakespeare draws parallels between him and Romeo, transforming his character into something much more significant as the play comes to a close. In terms of key quotations for Paris, perhaps something that shows how similar he is to Romeo will be of use. Man of wax and Romeo's similar form of wax should be simple enough to memorise. If you found this video useful, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Everything I go through in this video can be found in the 3rd edition of Mr. Bruff's Guide to Romeo and Juliet, which is linked in the description.